YouTubers, Mike Martin's here, Mike Martin's channel. Thanks for joining me, guys, for this action-packed housing discussion here. Guys, new first-time home buyers aren't getting into the market, right? Any English-speaking country, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and Canada. United States, you still have the central US that's still very affordable. You can still pick up something for under 150 to 200,000, something decent. But in other major English-speaking countries, and if you look at it, I brought this up the other day, cities that have direct flights to them are all unaffordable in English-speaking countries, if you look at it. Cities that have direct flights. If you look at that, you start seeing, wait a minute, there's a direct flight from Hong Kong to Vancouver. They're both unaffordable. There's a direct flight from Hong Kong to Sydney. They're both unaffordable. There's a direct flight from Shanghai to Melbourne. They're both unaffordable. So if you look at the English-speaking countries, not from the other side, but coming to the English-speaking countries, you notice that there's a huge unaffordability levels. And it's getting harder for anybody to get into the market now with the stress testing and all this other crap they're throwing on. And now, today, Better Dwelling puts up an article that puts the nail into the coffin that says, "Hasta la vista, baby." And here it is. Canadian mortgage debt prints the second slowest May in at least 3 decades. Right there. No one's borrowing anymore. And with the banks not having any money in reserves to hedge against this crash, banks don't even have 10% in reserves. That's how bad it is. So they've asked a couple of Australian and New Zealand banks to put up to 30% in reserve and to crash for a hedge, to hedge against the crash. So hopefully they'll start telling Canadian banks to do the same soon. Canadian mortgage debt prints the second slowest May in at least 3 decades. Canadian mortgage growth is showing a minor signs of life, but Bank of Canada. BOC numbers show outstanding mortgage credit reached now record in May. The growth rate picked up from a month prior, but still second slowest May in 3 decades. Canadians owe over $1.56 trillion in mortgage debt. Canadian mortgage debt reached all-new time record high. The outstanding debt stood at 1.56% trillion in May, up 0.68% from the month before. The balance was also 3.64% higher than the same month last year. Outstanding mortgage credit printed new record, but growth is still slow for the month. Canadian outstanding mortgage credit, the outstanding balance of Canadian mortgage credit. Here it is. There's our recession bar right here. You should go back to, there it is. What recession? Wow. See, back here is when this is the time to live right here. Nobody really got into debt. Everyone paid their stuff off. But look what the price was back in the day. The annual pace of growth is higher than the month before, but much lower than Canadians are used to for May. The 3.64% annual rate of growth in May is 22.2% lower than the growth seen this time last year. This is the slowest annual rate of growth for any May in at least 29 years, with the exception of 2001. That one exception saw interest rates cut multiple times to bring back growth. Near-term mortgage growth could move higher, of course. Outstanding mortgage credit growth may rise in the near term. One common way of forecasting growth is annualizing a shorter period. Annualizing a trend tells how the whole year would look if it was like a shorter period. That is, of course, if the annualized growth stays higher or lower than the 12-month rate of growth. So that kind of gauges, easy way to gauge predictions on where things are going to be headed with growth. Canadian outstanding mortgage credit change. The last 12-month percentage change and the last 3-month annualized change of outstanding Canadian mortgage credit at large institutional lenders. Here it is. There's a 3-month and a 12-month. So it's obviously going down big time. Look at the heyday. Everyone lived in that heyday. The tulips bulbs for sale. Short-term annualized growth is substantially higher than ever last year's number. The 3-month annualized price of growth reached 4.1% in May, up 17.14% from last year. That's also how much higher it is than the 12-month rate of growth currently. Who remembers spring is typically the biggest window for real estate sales? Yes, but with first-time home buyers can't get into the market and people aren't getting married anymore and people aren't laying roots anymore, it's going to be a very interesting Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and UK in the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to be telling people we're going to tell people around the campfire 10, 20 years from now. Older people such as myself will be in our 60s and we'll be standing around the campfire telling stories about how things were. And people will be like, really? You guys did that? Wow, you guys were allowed to do that? That's the key, allowed. Worth remembering, spring is typically the biggest window for real estate sales. It's going to be an uphill battle to keep growth moving. The growth rate of mortgage debt is once again on the rise, but it is slowly, usually for the month. Low for the month. There are a few signs that mortgage growth may have bottomed. Yeah, maybe. Pending on no external pressure. However, the traditional busy season for real estate sales has mostly passed. That could damper the current momentum. So people are borrowing more against, their HELOCs and other avenues to live and to consume. And right now, with a lot of people not jumping into the property ladder, or a lot of people scared of jumping into the property ladder, I don't blame them. And banks are going to start to see hits. They're going to start to see hits. And that's why they're pushing to get rid of the stress test, because the stress test does not work in Vancouver and Toronto, Canada's most expensive cities. But the stress test model works for pretty much every other city in Canada. 200 miles outside of Vancouver and Toronto. 200 miles outside of Vancouver and Toronto, the stress test model works fine and dandy. Now, they're going to look to slash rates. And now with the Fed announcing QE infinity, you're going to see a lot of people switching their dollars into cryptocurrency and into gold or silver. So it's going to be a very interesting next couple of quarters to see where things head, war-wise, oil-wise, commodity-wise. Very interesting. Buckle up your seatbelts and enjoy the show. Guys, thanks for joining me and supporting me on Patreon. $1 a month buys me a coffee. Support me, buy me a coffee, and that goes towards coffee. It really does. And I'm also on Minds.com, and I'm also on BitChute if you can't find me on YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week.